Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Services and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel on Thursday, the 5th of February 2026. I'm Councillor Buddy Anderson and I will be chairing this meeting this evening. A few housekeeping items before we start. The meeting will be recorded and live streamed by Harbour District Council. Members and officers must use the desk microphones in order for this to work. Only 2 microphones, in addition to mine, can be used at the same time. Politely request that mobile phones be switched off to silent, and fire exits is just over there. Fire exit in the chamber. The meeting point is at the top of Mill Hill car park. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I have had apologies from Councillor Austin and Councillor Taylor. I don't believe there are any other apologies for absence. No. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, and item 3, draft minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of October 2025. Is the panel in agreement that these minutes are accurate recording and therefore I can sign them? Okay, I will now sign the minutes. Item 4, portfolio holder update. So I'll invite Councillor Asher to present. She is the Culture, Leisure, Economy and Tourism portfolio holder. So she will give you an update, and then the panel may ask any questions to her as they wish. So Councillor Asher, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm here to give you an update on my portfolio. So we'll start with grants. Following a very busy first year, the £1 million Community Grant Fund has enabled delivery of projects and initiatives at local level across the district. We're now well into the second year and looking forward to be able to support many more projects. The ward members' grants are also being successfully administered, and I'd like to thank the officers for their help and time with that. I know they've helped me a lot. I hope they've helped everybody else. With a range of great projects also benefiting. And these are in the draft budget again for next year. So hopefully we can help more projects in our communities. Information on the range of other available grants can be found on the website, such as environmental and business grants. Also, while we're on the subject of grants, I'd like to say about Section 106 grants, Section 106 money. I have asked the officers that if there is any grants, Section 106 money that is coming to an end, to contact the ward members if they're struggling to get projects. So we don't want a situation where there's money in the pot that's potentially going to run out. Events. The festive events season was very successful, with lots taking place across the district. We are expecting 2026 to be another great year for events, and there is lots of information on the website from licensing through to promotion, so please get in touch if you would like to support any events. UK SPF, the delivery of this remains on track with many projects funded across the district. We've been advised that the deadline for spending our allocation has been extended to the end of September this year, which gives further comfort around delivering. Projects including the Lutworth Town Centre works are due to commence very shortly, and a range of community master plans and ongoing heritage restoration works. Sports provision. Following a number of recent enhancements to sports facilities, including tennis and petanque, we are now looking at what other further provisions we can enable during 2026. We have recently reviewed our playing pitch strategy to ensure a robust evidence base and are now preparing a new built facilities strategy. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your report and your time, Councillor Asher. Does anybody on the panel wish to ask any questions? Councillor Nunn.
Thank you for the very short report. It would also have been useful to have known actually what members have applied for grants for, what they've been used for. So it would have been useful to have had that included. Would also been useful to see a full list of events that have gone on across the whole district, because sometimes some of us are only aware of those that are in our wards or where we live. And the UK Prosperity Fund, it would also be useful to have included what projects are funded as well.
Yes, Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the answer is really that these haven't been finished yet. The ward member grants obviously haven't been delivered yet, and they're still coming through. So I think we can get a list of what's come through at the end of it all. That's not a problem at all. And the same with the UK SPF. There's still projects we've got till the end of September. So we have got time to provide that. So that's not a problem. Happy to get the officers to provide lists of those.
Would you like to come back in, Councillor?
Yes, if they could please, because I'm of the understanding that some of these projects have been completed, so a list of what's been completed to date would be useful.
As we don't have an officer here that represents that area, I can't answer for them, but we can ask them for this information.
Anybody else? Councillor Wellban?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, just on the event section, I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to when you say if you would like support for your events. What events are we talking about? Sorry, I'm not.
I think if you've got any events in your area and you want support with it, then just get in touch. You know, there's community grants and there's grants for events now. So anything that people have got that they want support on, just let the officers know.
And what support can HDC provide
Oh,
if I had an event?
There's grants, and then HDC can offer advice on events.
Thank you. Yeah, is it publicised? Where can a member of the public get that information from?
It doesn't say it's advertised. I mean,
So if somebody in my ward has a fete or something or whatever they want to do, how would they know to contact HDC for support?
This is not about your ward. This is for you. So it's like
For me.
saying to you, please get in touch if you have anything for councillors, us as councillors. So if someone contacts you, you would then know to contact us.
I'm not entirely clear about this. No, I'm not. Can anyone elaborate? I'm not quite sure.
It may help. I appreciate not everyone's online, but on our website, there's a specific event section. It has a range of toolkits and forms such as risk assessments, even through to lost child notification processes. And there's also an event notification form where they can complete that so that people can see it, and it's distributed to, say, the event safety group and things like that, so that we become aware of the event going on. Actually, it also might just be helpful in reference to Councillor Nunn's comments. I'm conscious the committee earlier this year did scrutinise the grants and the community grant fund and the way that that's processed. Obviously, as Councillor Asher mentioned, we can supply lists of the ward members' grants and how they've been used. That might be an area, having listened to the joint scrutiny of the budget, that you want to revisit in next year's work programme too. So we can get the information, but it is an area you have reviewed as well.
Councillor Nunn, and then I'll go.
It wasn't about the process of it. It was more what has actually been supplied by it. That's all.
Councillor Mahal.
Hi, yeah. Also, if you can give us a rough idea of what kind of people have come forward, what kind of support they have asked funding for.
Are you talking about the ward grants or the community grants?
Yeah, ward grants.
The ward grants. Okay, well,
As in, was there a theme going across the?
I haven't seen a list of ward grants because, as I say, I know with my ward grants that the last ones came in earlier this week, so that there is. I have not seen any list, and again, there's no officer here that covers this, so you know, I'm sure a list will be brought to the table and shown to us to see what there is in the ward grants. But as it stands, that I've not actually seen a list of what's in the ward grants, but it will be interesting to see what has come through. I mean, I'm really pleased that we're potentially doing them again, because there's a lot of people that have come forward in my ward for money. So
In relation to the ward improvement grants, am I right in saying that the applications, are they just closing or they're just about to close? It may be that until after all the applications are closed, we're not able to get a full list anyway.
yeah, so I was told that I had to get mine in by the end of January. And then I was told that as long as it was in by Monday, just gone, that was fine. And then I think then they go back out to the applicant and get them to fill in the paperwork. So it is very much on the cusp of closing like this week. So, and then I think the money gets sent out. That has to be sent out by March.
Councillor Sarpas.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you, not now, but about sports for Lutterworth and some things that maybe in the future need to be suggested for Lutterworth. I appreciate what they've done to the sports centre and everything else. I'll give an example of just my ward grants. One went to dementia and research and education for them for equipment, and another one went to the mental health CAF for them to buy iPads to help people with mental health problems that come into their CAF. So I just thought,
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, I'll be happy to speak to you about the sports provision in Lutterworth. That'd be good to have a chat. And thanks for the information on the ward grants.
Anyone else for Councillor Ashow? Thank you very much for your time and your update, Councillor Ashow. We will move on to item 5, open spaces strategy review. So just to give you a bit of background of, we've got a speaker table over there. So yesterday afternoon, I had some correspondence from officers suggesting that there may be residents, among others, that wanted to put questions forward. I've also received some questions from Councillor Mrs. Page, and one of the residents in the gallery suspiciously looks like the chairman of the council, who is not able to sit on this committee, but is a resident. So I'm going to allow us to have speakers. However, we only have David Atkinson till 7:30, so I will stick with panel questions to begin with and make sure that the panel get their questions in before I even move on to speakers. Now, to kick things off, Councillor Galton is going to introduce the report as the relevant portfolio holder.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for inviting me this evening. I think this is a really important piece of work that we've been engaged on for some time now. Open spaces and particularly children's play areas, I believe, are one of the most important functions that we have responsibility for, mainly through the planning system to deliver them. Until about 10 years ago, the default position was adoption by this council, HDC, or the local parish council, but that policy was changed, and now most open space on new developments are transferred to private management companies. This has not been without its problems and given rise to numerous complaints. Paragraph 2 of the report in front of you does set those out, clearly saying that where the complaints have come from, including from local MPs, and it's been now referred to as fleecehold. So that's the background against why we felt it was timely and important to have a review of the way open space is managed going forward. We embarked on that, I think, probably over a year ago now, appointed consultants to help us with that process. Work's been led through our planning service and through Matt Bills as the neighbourhood officer, and that has now come to a conclusion. The report is available in front of you this evening, and what I hope is that there will be a lot of consensus on the recommendations in the report and how we might move forward and change that policy where the default has been for private management, and return to a situation which is suggested in this report, where we move away from private management and ensure sites remain in public ownership going forward. I would remind members that we've got a lot of development likely to be coming forward in future years, and that is going to require open space. It will, under our present policies, deliver open space. This is about how that open space is managed, how it's maintained going forward, and how local residents, how they pay for it. One of the criticisms has been very much that people pay twice, because if you have private management, you have to pay a service charge, which is put, as I understand it, Matt will be able to explain this, it's put as a charge on your property, and you have to pay that, but you still have to pay your council tax, including your parish tax. So that's the background to this. This is why we felt it was important to look at this, and a very, very comprehensive report in front of you this evening. I'll pass over to Matt to explain it in more detail, but I do hope there's consensus going forward to change this policy. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Galton. Matt is our Neighbourhood and Green Spaces Officer, and he will provide brief comments on the report. A presentation on the report.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for inviting me along again to provide some information on this to you. We've been working very hard with our colleagues at TEP, who are going to give us a brief presentation about how they have gone through the process of the consultation, the evidence gathering, crunching all the data, and coming up with this information in front of you tonight. Open space is really important to us. As Councillor Galton says, it's something that everybody can use freely. It's something that everybody can drives past every day, walks through every day, walks the dog round, and everybody wants to see that the open space provide what they want. But it needs to provide different things for different people, and also provide a multifunctional space. So one of the things that we're trying to work on is providing space not just for people but for wildlife as well. We're trying to look at how we can adopt this hierarchy of adoption between parish council and district council, with management companies at the bottom of the hierarchy, how we can set our commuted sums for maintenance to make it more attractive for developers to transfer to the district council, and how we can work with developers where sites are small and may be constrained, that they can give off-site contributions to enhance other open space to provide for those communities. So I hope that we have a really good discussion tonight. I'm really pleased to see that we've got some members of the public here, and we can talk through this and then decide how the recommendations go forward to Cabinet, and what the policy and the way we work through the actual delivery of this strategy with our partners in the development industry and communities. And I'd like to hand over to Rebecca and Sorrel if they are there, please. They are. I can see them on the screen.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks everyone for inviting us tonight to present the strategy. I will just start screen sharing on a presentation in a moment. So hopefully this will pop up for you. I won't be able to see you as soon as I've shared this. So if someone can just tell me that you can see that, that would be great.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Then Sorrel, across to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting us to attend this meeting. We welcome the opportunity to present a high-level overview of the Harbour District Council's Open Spaces Strategy, which will hopefully assist the panel in its scrutiny of the work undertaken, and we hope there will be an opportunity to respond to any questions on conclusion of the presentation. We would be grateful if attendees could hold questions until that time. So by way of introduction, hi, I'm Sorrel. I'm a Senior Landscape Manager, and I'm joined by Rebecca Martin, Associate Director of Landscape Management. We represent the Environment Partnership, or TEP. We are a UK-based multidisciplinary environmental and planning consultancy providing specialist advice across planning, design and environmental management. TEP works closely with local authorities, developers and community organisations to deliver evidence-based strategies relating to open space, green infrastructure, landscape, ecology, heritage and recreation. We are recognised for producing robust policy-led assessments and practical guidance that support sustainable development, biodiversity enhancement and long-term placemaking. You may understand or know that we delivered the previous 2020 Open Spaces Strategy and have worked closely with Harbour District Council to update the evidence base up to the local plan end date. Both Rebecca and I have worked closely with council officers, including Matthew Bills, Tess Nelson and David Atkinson, to prepare and deliver the Open Spaces Strategy for Harbour District. Next slide, please, Rebecca.
Thanks, Sarah. So just in terms of how we're going to approach the presentation this evening, so we're just going to start with an overview of the project scope and methodology briefly. We'll talk you through the 5 key stages of the assessment, including the methodology undertaken for those. And then we'll conclude with final sections, which will focus on the governance and delivery, as mentioned earlier. This will include protocol for adoptions of open spaces, the use of planning conditions and the developer contributions calculator. And we'll close with a demonstration of a new digital executive summary that we've produced for the strategy.
Thank you, Rebecca. We were appointed by Harbour District Council in May 2025 to review and update the 2020 Open Spaces Strategy, ensuring that it continues to provide a robust and up-to-date evidence base to support the local plan growth up to 2041, irrespective of ownership. We produced the 2020 evidence base, and one of our 5 offices is located within Market Harbour itself, so we understand the local area. We've worked very closely alongside the council, key stakeholders, including parish councils within the district, to understand the local challenges in relation to open space. We think that the strategy goes further than providing an evidence base, and it provides recommendations to address those local challenges and concerns highlighted throughout the strategy. The strategy is formed by national and local planning policy. And as you can see on the slide, the NPPF defines open space as areas of land, but also areas of water, such as rivers and canals, lakes and reservoirs, which offer important opportunities for sport recreation and can act as a visual amenity. While the former Planning Practice Guidance Note 17 and its companion guide have now been superseded, its core principles and assessment methodology remains relevant and continues to inform the approach taken within this strategy. It establishes proposed standards for all open space across all open space typologies, and I'll touch upon these in future slides. We'll consider quality, quantity, value and accessibility. And it also provides a framework to help the council prioritise investment, safeguard existing spaces and secure developer contributions where appropriate. We think the aim of the strategy is to maintain the current level of open space as the population grows and ensures that all existing and new open spaces are designed, delivered and managed in accordance with the established quality standards. I'll just hand over to Rebecca.
Thanks, Sarah. So yeah, as Sorrel said, this strategy applies the principles and methodologies based on and outlined in the Planning Practice Guidance Note from 2002 and its companion guide. Although this document is particularly dated now, it is the most up-to-date method for undertaking an open space assessment. It's not been superseded by the Sport England approach, although as we've gone through this process, we have drawn in up-to-date guidance, including the Natural England Green Infrastructure Framework and the revised Fields and Trust standards. The work's delivered through the key 5 stages that are shown on the screen. We'll run through these in greater detail a little bit later on. But if effectively, stage 1, we look at identifying local needs, so a baseline assessment and consultation. Stage 2, we physically go out to the site and audit a handful of sites within the district. At stage 3, we look to set provision standards for quantity, quality, accessibility and value across the district for relevant typologies. We then apply these standards to see what that looks like in practice. So when those standards are applied, what does it mean in terms of the standards? Are they being met? And then we conclude all of that at stage 5 with our strategic opportunities for open spaces, concluding with the final report. So just to refresh, when we talk about open space, there's lots of different typologies included in this. So this open spaces strategy includes the open spaces on the screen, the allotments, amenities, cemeteries, civic space, natural and semi-natural green space, parks and gardens of provision and young people are standard. Greenways is updated from the previous built sports facility strategy. And just for completeness, outdoor sports facilities are not considered in this strategy as they're accounted for in the playing pitch strategy. And finally, just to recap, same as the previous 2020 strategy, whilst we include cemeteries and religious grounds, this is above ground provision. It does not capture burial space or plot provision. This is addressed in a separate strategy. So just in terms of study area, so all open spaces irrespective of ownership are included within the strategy. It is for the whole of Harbour District, and this strategy aligns with 3 sub-areas shown on the screen, so East, Middle and West. This is consistent with the previous strategy and allows for comparison between results. It also aligns with the sub-areas implemented within the playing pitch strategy. So just hand over to Sorrel now for a recap of what we did in stage 1, and we'll take you through the process and the evidence gathering.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. So stage 1 of the open spaces strategy focused on understanding the local needs and establishing that baseline evidence for the remainder of the strategy. We undertook background research to identify the challenges and opportunities of open space delivery and management across the district. That was supported by a detailed planning policy review. So we undertook a review of relevant national and local policy. We undertook a review of the district's current approach to open space provision. We also undertook a review of the 2020 provision for open space sport and recreation delivery plan and the existing adoption protocol for open spaces, as well as a critical review of the use of planning conditions within development proposals. So population change is a key driver of open space demand, and for this reason population projections were undertaken up to 2041, and we used the most recent ONS subnational population data, ensuring that future needs are addressed in line with the local plan. And a core part of stage 1 was consultation and engagement. So we held a 6-week consultation programme involving residents, parish councils, neighbourhood forums and developers. Feedback was sought on the quantity, quality, accessibility and management of open spaces across the district to ensure that the strategy both reflected community experience and stakeholder insight. This engagement for the consultation was delivered through a combination of online questionnaires, virtual events and in-person drop-in sessions across the district. The mix of engagement methods helped to ensure that the consultation was inclusive and accessible, capturing both strategic and local perspectives. The findings from stage 1 provided this evidence base to inform subsequent audits, setting standards and policy development stages of the strategy. Just going to hand over to Rebecca, who's going to touch on auditing local provision as part of stage 2.
Thank you, Sorrel. So as I mentioned earlier, as part of the strategy and as is standard for open space assessments, we go out and visit a number of sites within our study area. For this updated strategy, we've visited 328 open spaces across the district and across the different sub-areas. We didn't include greenways and allotments. This is consistent with the previous strategy. And when we talk about the audits, we audit for a few things. So we use a quality audit, which is based on the Green Flag Award criteria. The Green Flag Award is a national benchmark standard for quality parks and open space. It's also now used internationally. The quality audit assesses features of sites such as entrances, signage, accessibility, cleanliness and maintenance, and the presence and the condition of facilities. In addition, we undertake a value assessment, which is guided by the Planning Practice Guidance Note 17 and its companion guide. Value is less about maintenance and how a site looks. It's more about functionality of a site and multifunctionality and the contribution each space makes to community, environment and local heritage, recognising that value is not solely determined by the size or appearance of a site, but by function and benefit. Together, the quality and the value audits provide a robust baseline of open space provision, giving us a picture of open spaces across the district, and again informs setting the standards and shaping future policy and investment priorities. The audit data is summarised within the strategy and within the executive summary that we'll show you later, and we'll provide a full breakdown of the sites audited and the scores. I'll just move on to setting the standards then, which is stage 3. So within an open space assessment, we set standards for quantity, quality, accessibility and value. These are generally set at a local level to meet local needs, but we do benchmark against national standards. For quantity, standards are expressed as a hectareage per thousand population, and this slide summarises the quantity standards across each open space typology. As part of this stage, we tested the existing adopted standards against national benchmarks, our audit findings and consultation feedback. And following this assessment and discussion with the council, it was agreed to retain the existing quantity standards. These were determined to remain appropriate and are well understood by officers and developers and provide a clear and consistent basis for securing new open space through development. Retaining the current quantity standards ensures that the council can continue to identify surpluses and deficiencies, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on when we apply those standards, and where appropriate, secure financial contributions towards the improvement or provision of open space, particularly for typologies that are currently underprovided for. I'll just hand over to Sorrel, who's going to recap on the quality and value standard setting.
Thank you. Standards have been set for quality and value to ensure current and new open spaces meet the needs of the district. So starting with quality, the audit results show that most open spaces across the district are performing well, with most sites assessed as good, very good or excellent. This indicates that existing spaces are in general well managed. However, there remains a small proportion of sites assessed as fair or poor, which highlights there are opportunities for targeted improvement. The existing quality standard is proposed to be retained, as discussed with the council, as it remains appropriate and proportionate and reflects best practice in line with the Green Flag Award criteria. Importantly, this enables developer contributions to be directed towards enhancing the quality of open spaces, particularly where opportunities for new provision are limited. In terms of value, the assessment shows a small number of high-value strategic spaces, alongside many sites assessed as low value, often reflecting a more single-purpose or underutilised space. Retaining the current value standard supports a strategic approach to investment, allowing contributions to be used to increase multifunctionality, community benefit and environmental value. So overall, we are retaining the existing quality and value standards, which will provide continuity, supports enhancement of current provision and ensures that the strategy remains robust, deliverable and effective. It's important to note that a low value or poor quality site does not necessarily correlate to the level of use. Low value sites generally have limited function or value offered to the local area. These are things like connectivity, setting of a place or openness. Equally, a poor quality site may require additional investment. It's important to note that the audit scores are also a snapshot in time, with each audited site visited once. I'll hand over to Rebecca to discuss setting provision standards.
Thanks, Harold. So when we talk about accessibility, this can be reviewed in a few ways. Traditionally, this is looked at as a buffer, a time or a walking distance as a straight line buffer. For this strategy and the previous strategy, we are using isochrone buffers, which better reflect real world standards and barriers to accessing open space. So following a review of accessibility mapping, and we can look at that later on when we demonstrate the executive summary, we presented the existing standards and proposed standards to the steering group. We also, again, compare against national benchmark standards. So the changes proposed within this strategy are updated standards for natural and semi-natural green space and allotments. These are adjusted with the aim to improve the level of access, and these were the typologies highlighted through consultation of areas where accessibility could be improved. The consultation directly feeds into the setting of these standards, and the revised accessibility thresholds respond to locally identified gaps. We'll demonstrate later on what these revised standards look like in practice in our interactive mapping at the end of the presentation. And as I said, we look at the real world barriers and set access points when we determine these standards. So just moving on to stage 4, then I'm conscious of time. So we look at applying the standards that we've set. Stage 4 applies provision standards across the district and its 3 sub-areas, which are considered in more detail on the next few slides. As I said earlier, the quantity standards are applied against the current and future projected population expressed as a hectareage per 1,000 population. So when we apply those proposed standards across the district, there's a quantitative deficiency across a number of typologies, including allotments, community gardens and orchards, parks and gardens, and provision for children and young people at present. This is reflected again up to 2041 with the addition of a district-wide deficiency in natural and semi-natural green space. The overall quality of open space is generally strong. The majority of sites assessed as good or very good. Retaining the standard reinforces the importance of protecting and enhancing the existing assets, and retaining that standard can be used to identify sites which require improvement. Over half of all of the open spaces audited are low value, delivering some value with opportunities for additional multiple functions for community benefits and environmental benefits. And then looking at accessibility, generally access to open spaces across the district is largely consistent in the built-up areas, indicating that most residents can access different types of open space within the standards, although there are localised gaps and generally some access concerns highlighted by the public in consultation in relation to travel to these sites. I'll just move on to the East sub-area for Cyril to present a summary of that.
Thank you very much. Overall, the East sub-area has the highest level of open space provision per 1,000 population. This is largely driven by the natural and semi-natural green space available. While this results in good access to informal green space, we can see there's ongoing deficits in parks, allotments, and provision for children and young people. When we project up to 2041, the East sub-area is anticipated to continue to be very well served by natural green space, but ongoing shortfalls in parks, allotments, and play provision. In terms of the quality, the majority of sites were assessed as good or very good, and the 24 fair sites with 2 poor quality sites. The value, there was a mix of low, medium and high value sites. Accessibility, mostly good access to natural and semi-natural green space, cemeteries and other burial grounds, and there's limited access to allotments, parks and gardens, and this may be due to the dispersed settlements within that sub-area. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So when we look at the middle sub-area, at present there's a surplus of amenity green space, but deficits in all other typologies, particularly natural green space, parks, allotments, and provision for children and young people. When we project up to 2041, these deficits are forecast to continue as the population grows, and with provision access strongest in Market Harbour and more limited in the smaller surrounding settlements. When we look at quality, the majority of sites are assessed as excellent or very good, or good, with very limited number of fair sites, and there was no poor quality spaces. Most sites are assessed as low value, with a small number of high strategic spaces, including those Welland Park and Airfield Country Park. Across the middle sub-area in terms of accessibility, there's good access to most typologies within Market Harbour, and limited access in those smaller settlements, such as Fleckney and Husbands Bosworth, to some typologies. You could just go on to the next slide, thank you. When we look at the west sub-area, the current surplus is in some types of open space. These are expected to reduce over time with growing shortfalls in natural and semi-natural green space, parks and gardens, and children's provision up to 2041. While overall quality is generally fair to good and access is strong in the main settlements, there are fewer high-value spaces and some gaps in accessibility, particularly around natural green space, highlighting the need for targeted future provision. And just go on to the next slide, please. So we can have a look at the assessment of change from 2020 to 2025. A table on the slide shows each of the change in typology from 2020, including the number and the area. So between 2020 and 2025, the total number of open spaces increased from 654 to 737. That's a gain of 83 sites. Overall, open space provision increased from 45.3 hectares to 1,142.59 hectares. The largest growth was within amenity green space. That's an additional 58 sites. That equates to 37.72 hectares. And also natural and semi-natural green space, where 23 sites were added. That was 12.68 hectares. So allotments and play areas saw the smallest increase, while you can notice that one park and garden site was removed from the dataset. This was because it was no longer deemed applicable for inclusion within the assessment. Greenways has increased significantly, adding 408 kilometres of routes. This may be due to a change in methodology approach from calculating greenways, which now includes all public rights of way, and that can be seen in Chapter 3 of the report. I'll just hand over to Rebecca, who's going to touch on key issues.
Thanks, Cyril. So just concluding on all of that evidence gathered at consultation on the ground and through a review of key documents, we've identified several key issues in addition to the baseline assessment. So key issues raised through consultation. There's a deemed issue of quality of open space and the delivery of open space being managed due to inconsistent management approaches. There were accessibility and connectivity challenges, including poor links between open spaces and nature corridors. And there were some concerns raised over the long-term management and governance, with general dissatisfaction with private management companies and a clear preference for local authority or parish council or community-led stewardship. Issues raised through some of the other baseline information that we've reviewed. So we've undertaken a critical policy existing planning condition review. So planning conditions must clearly define the standards, scope, triggers and responsibilities to ensure open space landscaping and things like biodiversity net gain and management requirements are delivered as intended at planning outset. Open space, habitat creation and management plans are often delivered late in the development process, reducing early community benefit and ecological establishment on new development sites. And it was identified that there was limited mechanisms and resources to monitor the long-term compliance with planning conditions, particularly where obligations extend beyond practical completion of open spaces. And then finally, when we reviewed the approach to long-term management, there's a risk that commuted sums are insufficient in duration or value to support the long-term maintenance, establishment and future replacement costs of items on those open spaces. Ongoing concerns regarding the reliance on private management companies with a strong preference for local authority, parish or community-led models. And without clear management frameworks, adoption arrangements and review mechanisms, the quality and functionality of open spaces may decline in the long run. So all of that said, we've worked to pull together some additional key recommendations, and stage 5 draws together the evidence from the needs assessment, audits and setting standards alongside a review of best practice and practice undertaken from other local authorities, including Stratford-on-Avon and Warwick District Council. Solutions are proposed as well as a high-level action plan capable of being updated year on year by the District Council as a live document to progress key priority areas. And in addition to the updated evidence base, the following solutions are proposed. So there's proposal for a new framework for open space delivery. This work informed a district-wide framework should be adopted and provides details for how open space should be delivered, managed and maintained going forward. There's a recommendation for an updated open space guidance document, which will be a central element of this stage, and updating the open space 2021 guidance document and delivery plan. The new guidance will provide clarity on provision requirements, governance hierarchy, long-term management expectations and financial contributions, drawing on approaches used elsewhere. And critically, the proposed governance hierarchy is a key output of this stage. So it prioritises, where possible, adoption by parish and town councils, followed by the district council and then third-party management organisations, ensuring roles and responsibilities are transparent at the outset of the planning process. This was discussed and reviewed by HDC's legal team when we were developing the approach, and we also discussed this approach with parish councils at consultation stage. The policy approach also strengthens accountability and financial security by providing guidance on commuted sums and long-term maintenance contributions to ensure open spaces remain safe, functional and financially sustainable. We've also drawn in other key considerations when developing the contributions calculator, including the potential requirement for 10% net gain in biodiversity on sites by reviewing the current approach to the calculator. Finally, stage 5A highlights the importance of planning obligations with strengthened planning conditions, and draft conditions are found appended to the strategy, and legal agreements for securing delivery, post-completion inspections, quality checks and long-term monitoring is recommended through landscape management plans and those planning conditions. And together the hope is that this stage sets a strategic framework that informs the detailed delivery recommendations presented in stage 5B.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. So I'm just going to touch on the recommendations. So this kind of brings together the evidence base from previous stages and translates it into a clear set of recommendations for adoption and implementations. So the recommendations focus on how the strategy is delivered in practice. This includes adopting and enforcing the recommended open space standards through the planning process, ensuring that existing open spaces designated within the local plan are protected from inappropriate development unless a robust assessment which is based on best practice guidance then demonstrates that that space is surplus to provision or suitable mitigation is implemented. Adopt and implement the open space guidance document, which will replace the 2021 delivery plan. This document provides clarity on provision requirements, adoption and governance arrangements, such as Rebecca's discussed. The recommendations also address long-term stewardship and accountability, including the requirement for landscape management plans, adoption of open space hierarchy for decision-making, and regular reviews of the commuted sums or developer contributions calculator to ensure that they remain sufficient and up to date. They also should promote the delivery of multifunctional open spaces, supported by the open space guide, design guide, which is appended to the strategy. This will maximise environmental, health and community benefits from new and existing open spaces. And finally, it's to deliver projects highlighted within the action plan. This action plan identifies priority projects for Harborough, responsible stakeholders, and short to medium and long-term delivery timescales. This ensures that the strategy is implementable, measurable, and responsive over time. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So this is the final slide. I'm just going to touch on the digital executive summary. So we have developed this digital executive summary to provide a clear, accessible overview of the open spaces strategy findings, data and its recommendations. We'll provide a quick demonstration of how the digital tool works in a little while. The purpose of the digital summary is to communicate this complex information in a concise and visual way, using interactive maps, charts and dashboards rather than a lengthy standalone document. This supports informed decision making by making evidence easier to understand and interrogate for members, officers and the wider public. The digital resource includes a high-level summary of the strategy's aims, objectives, methodologies and recommendations, alongside spatial mapping that highlights patterns of provision, deficiency and opportunities across the district. It allows users to explore information both at a district-wide level and for individual sub-areas or sites. The summary has been delivered using ArcGIS Experience Builder and provides an interactive resource, ensuring transparency and ease of access. It's intended to act as a live, user-friendly reference tool that complements the full technical strategy rather than replacing it. I'm just going to hand over to Rebecca, who's going to give a quick demonstration of this tool.
Thank you, Sorrel. I'll just stop sharing on the presentation and open up the tool. So effectively, once users click on the link and this goes live, they're brought to an introductory page, and this can be hosted hopefully by the council and kind of generate discussion in terms of digital platforms for reporting. Users can navigate either using the tab at the top or the buttons here. We have an introduction page which summarises the content of the presentation. So we've got the typologies included, methodology, etc. But importantly, what we've also got in here is a navigable map that users can interact with. They can zoom in and out, and they can also click on spaces. So if I'll just use Welland Park as an example. If I zoom in here, users can click on a site and it will bring up the site name, the typology, ownership, where that information is held, to help alleviate pressure in terms of queries of who owns a space or who is responsible for managing a space. But it also brings up a quality and a value assessment score from the strategy as well. We also have quantity tabs, which summarises the information within the strategy. I won't spend too long on this because, David, I know we've only got you for another 10 minutes. But again, I encourage you to kind of have a look around this. This is very much interactive. You can use the pie charts to see how many sites there are of different typologies. And then we look at the surplus and deficiencies across Harborough and across each of the sub areas. So that replicates the information that we've just presented in the PowerPoint. Furthermore, we've got an assessment of quality and value. The tabs look relatively similar, so I won't go through both of them, but we've got the quality split overall and the quality split by typology. And again, an interactive map where users can filter. So if you only wanted to see poor quality sites as an example, you can use this to filter them and show only the sites that are scored the lowest on this assessment. So that's what that's doing now. It's just showing the poor quality sites that we've audited. And then finally, we've got the accessibility standards. So we have our overall general accessibility to open spaces in the district. So pretty much largely covered within the district, apart from the kind of grey gaps here. And we've got a review of the accessibility buffers for each of the typologies as well. So again, users can zoom in and out, and this is much more interactive than the kind of flat PDFs that traditionally supported these assessments. Finally, we've got a recommendations page as well to just to conclude the key recommendations within the strategy. And the hope is that as new spaces come on board, regardless of ownership, the data set can be updated. So this can be a live kind of update in terms of the mapping for everyone to use. I'll stop screen sharing now and welcome any questions. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Matt, Rebecca and Sorrel for that presentation. So what I'll do is we'll open up to the panel now for questions and then perhaps invite in members of the gallery a bit in due course. Is there anybody here that specifically has a question for the Director of Planning? Do they think? I'm conscious that we don't have very long at all. Councillor Nunn?
Yes, thanks for that, Chair. I was hoping we'd get that finished by 7:30 so this question could be asked. What happens if we decide to go down the route of SIL? Because obviously within this report it refers all the time to section 106, but it doesn't appear to make any reference to if we make the changes to go down the SIL route and how that would impact on this.
Shall I come in, Chairman?
Yes, please, David.
Yeah, the community infrastructure levy, we're reviewing that now. We're looking into that now. The council would have the decision on what to put on the list. So if the council chose to put open space management on the SIL charging list, it could do that, and then it would be under the community infrastructure levy funding mechanism for maintaining open spaces rather than section 106. So if the council chose to sort of do a more strategic approach, putting up front a charge up front and in advance rather than negotiating site by site, it could do that through the community infrastructure levy, Chairman. Thank you.
Matt, did you want to come in as well?
Yes, I'll just say that the evidence base that we have here for assessing the need for open space will still be relevant for the work that I do. So when there's new development, I can calculate how much open space that new development and what typologies of open space that development should provide, and what the commuter sum should be. So this will still be a relevant evidence base even if and when SIL is adopted, because there'll be section 106 agreements for a particular site, whereas SIL will then take the developer contributions and distribute those to whichever priorities the council deems fit.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question for David on the hierarchy, the adoption hierarchy that's in this document. I'm just curious as to whether it's a mandatory requirement on a developer to go through the process of offering the open space to a parish, then a town, then the district. Because if it's not mandatory through the planning process to do so, where's the incentive for a developer to have to cough up 30 years worth of money when they might as well hang on to the land, palm it off on a management company and make the residents pay? So the hierarchy is brilliant, but what's the teeth behind it? That would be my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. It's a really good question. The council's policy framework would be the benchmark for this. You're absolutely right what you touch on. Fundamentally, there isn't, we couldn't force, I think Matt will correct me if I'm wrong, we can't absolutely at the nth degree force developers down a particular road. But if the council's very clear on its policy approach through the local plan, this strategy and the guidance document that Matt may come on to later in the meeting, he's preparing it feeding off the hard and brilliant work that TEP have done. That's a very significant line in the sand for developers, that the council's serious about taking open spaces into its own control or into parish and town council control. You're right, legally, in the dry and dusty world of the law, we can't absolutely force them. But as is all, it's the same with all planning policy, Councillor Bateman. You know, it's a very significant element in the negotiation with developers. It's a really serious thing if we adopt the local plan that says that, and we adopt this open space strategy that says that, we have some really strong we have some really strong leadership there to encourage the developers to go where we want them to go. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wellban.
Yes, thank you. I've got some questions from Councillor Rosita Page, who has asked the questions before tonight. First one, I think has just been dealt with, which is it legally enforceable? Sounds like not. Her second question is, with the advent of LGR, is this sustainable? A new local authority may not wish to take this on. Please give your views on that. And it's true that they might not adopt a similar policy, and how we're going to deal with that. Third question she's got is, parishes are resisting any kind of extra work, in quoting they are only volunteers. They could be asked to take on grass cutting, which was a paid initiative by LCC in the past, but many parishes handed this back very quickly. If it comes to maintenance or civic work, parishes wouldn't have the ability or the finances to carry out anything like that. So therefore, would you please explain how that will be covered? And then her fourth question is about, how would you compel parish buy-in? I have some of my own, but I'll come back for those. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Wellband. Local government review. So as is with most planning matters, it goes with the land. So if the council's policy was to have the hierarchy we've described, that would be the council's policy that it adopted, and that plan would be in place beyond local government review. It would then be for any successor council to review that as it wished to. We can't obviously second guess what that new council might wish to do, but certainly as far as we are concerned as Harbour District, we would be setting our planning policy, which, though I want to stress, it's very significant. Legally enforceable is a specific thing, but it's really serious to breach a policy compliance. So the local plan's a statutory document, and that's a very significant step for developers to adhere to. So it's very strong. It's very strong to say if we were to adopt a policy approach that said we wanted developers to go down this road, that's significant for us as a council and a policy approach. A parish's ability, yeah, obviously it would be negotiation. If there may be some relationship to the council's contract with its open space maintenance people, that we are talking to our open space team. It would need to be negotiated through in terms of the parish's ability to manage the space. We could offer a service to those parish councils. They could pay the district council to do the work, for example. There's a number of options available to us there that we would have to evaluate in terms of the delivery. Compel parish buy-in. Well, again, it's a negotiation with the parish. So if the parish were adamant they didn't want to do it, then that would be something we would have to look at. Either we'd take it as a district authority if we had the resource to do so, or we would have to obviously evaluate that when we got to that point in the negotiation. But it would all have to be worked through the discussions, I think, is what I would say to that one, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. I'm aware that it's 7:30, so thank you for your time. Matt would like to come in as well, and then I'll come to yourself, Councillor Sarpas.
Sorry, Chair. I'll just make a comment about the
Thank you, Chairman.
About the capacity of parish councils to undertake grounds maintenance works. There may be some smaller parishes, obviously, that don't undertake any works at the moment, and because they don't have any open spaces, but they'd be very small parishes and probably unlikely to attract new development that has open space. So it would generally be the larger parishes that a lot of them already do have a grounds maintenance function. We'd hope that they would be able to have that capacity and expertise to carry that on and adopt open spaces as required.
Councillor Sarfas, hopefully Matt will be able to answer your questions.
Regarding management for green open spaces, to try and convince developers not to use management companies, but try to encourage the neighbours and the groups to develop their own groups that would probably make it cheaper for them, because the management companies are so expensive. So how would we be able to try and encourage the developers to do this? Because, you know, to them it's easier for them to get a management company than for, say, people paying £200 a year for a management company, which would probably be cheaper done in a group of people living in the development, because as soon as they buy the house, the contract for the management, it's already in the contract. So just a question really, how can we encourage the developers to?
Thank you. Yes, it is a process of negotiation. We will have to adopt a policy approach that encourages developers in the first instance to have those negotiations with us, and pitch our commuted sums for maintenance at a level which is attractive enough to developers to transfer open space to us. But once developers know that that is our policy approach, they will, in their land negotiations with landowners, start to look at the way that that land price is negotiated at the beginning of the development process. We will have, through Section 106 legal agreements, we will still have those legal agreements, which again negotiated, but once they're signed, we can, and that is in the legal agreement, that the open space is to be offered to the district council in the first instance, or the parish council in the first instance, then obviously that is an enforceable legal agreement between landowners, developers and ourselves. So there are a number of mechanisms that we can use, but it is about pitching that, I think, pitching that commuted sum level at the right cost to developers to encourage them to have those negotiations, be successful in that negotiation process.
Councillor Elliott.
Yes, I've been concerned about the time that developers are taking to pay their commuted sums, and I know Matt's done a lot to bring that down, but some of them are still take ages, and all the time that that's going on, the area's getting worse and worse, and it just doesn't seem to work. Also, in my area, we've got private companies, and we've also got parish councils doing work, and the parish councils is far in front of the private companies, and the private companies are doing the least amount of work for the most money. And I'd like to know where we can come and say that you've got to improve on this.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it has been a common story over the last few years that the number of complaints about management companies has increased. There are some management companies that do an excellent job. There are some management companies that do a really, really poor job. And they are out there to make a profit. We have to recognise that, and we have to hold them to account where we can. What we found, getting hold of them first is quite difficult. Enforcing any changes in their behaviour is quite difficult. We do try consistently through enforcement, but it is really hard work to do that. I know that in the last few months, the enforcement team has been there are more enforcement officers, and that's been bulked up to try and address some of this. And there are, I think, there's a proposal in next year's budget to put extra resource into open spaces again to try and resolve some of these issues. I mean, I think that your area, Councillor Elliott, is quite unique, that parish councils have taken on new open space, but you also have that mix, so you directly see the differences. Yeah. And it is tangible what difference there is. And this is why we've been asked by the elected members to start this piece of work, find out the issues and the problems, how we can start to resolve them, and come up with a package which we will then present as part of the adoption process with Cabinet to get the best that we can out of open space and make sure that it goes to the right accountable bodies in the future. How we mop up the 12 years of where we didn't adopt, we are trying to do that as well. So we're trying to sort of retrofit historic open spaces if we can, and work with developers, the more recent ones at the moment, but we can go back in over time to see whether we can negotiate with management companies to look at a different approach. Either get the district council to undertake that maintenance, get it transferred to either the parish council or the district council, or change the management company, or help residents, put in a residents management company that can then come to the district council perhaps to undertake their maintenance on their behalf. The good thing for residents about the district council undertaking management on open space is that the district council is accountable to you as members. So if there's a problem, residents will get on the phone, come and talk to you, and you can hold officers to account, whether that's in environmental services or in planning or enforcement. So there's that redress. And at the moment, I think that communities are struggling to contact their management organisations and get a satisfactory response out of them. And I'm sure that Peter and James are itching to tell us a bit more about that. But yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Wellban, you mentioned you had some questions yourself.
Yeah, thank you. As an aside, I work for the local MP, as you know, and the amount of casework we get on this, quite frankly, it's such a scammy industry. And as you just said, Matt, you know, when the council runs an open space, you can get on hold of your council, it's accountable, that's great. But with these companies, some of them are absolutely miles away. And we've had some horrendous casework where people have had horrific things, sewage coming up through, you know, drains and everything else, and they just can't get it resolved. So very good that we're looking at this. I think my preference would always be for the district council in the first instance to take on public open space. And I just wanted to ask about that. I don't think what's being proposed here is automatic adoption by the district council of new open spaces. It sounds like more like a conversation that goes on to determine who will manage the open space. And at the end of that, potentially it could be that a management company still takes on the running of that open space. So could I ask, is there any examples elsewhere in the country where councils have taken on an automatic policy of taking on open space? Because I'd be very interested to hear about that. And there was something else I was going to ask, but I completely forgot what it is, but I'll come back to it. Thank you. If you just address that. Oh, yes. And that was about the point you just made about those areas that currently have management companies at the moment. You just mentioned something really interesting, Matt, with you're talking to some of those developments, residents in those developments about rectifying those wrongs. So is it the case then that if residents come to the district council will help them, if possible, try to get them to a better place where they're not run by these scammy companies? That's it. Thank you.
I'll get Councillor Galton to come in and then I'll come over to you, Matt, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to comment on the hierarchy. Happy to look at that, what the hierarchy is. At the minute, it's the parish as number one, the district two. What seems to me to be most important is the ownership. The sites need to be in public ownership. There are a number of examples where we have been able to do that on recent developments. Scraptoff and Fernby have been involved in those. And although the parish took the transfer and own it, they've then contracted the maintenance back to this authority and FCC, our maintenance contractor. So it's effectively it's done for them, but they own the freehold. So that seems to me to be the most important objective. Just at the meeting of the chief exec last night, some head local government reorganisation was mentioned, and we can't guess what will happen in the future. But yeah, I think we've got to ask ourselves in whatever the new setup is, where the new authority is going to be responsible for adult social care, and children's services and highways, you know, is this going to be such a high priority for a new unitary authority with lots of things it's going to have to do and lots of things it's going to have to prioritise? Is leisure and open space going to be at the top of that agenda that we can focus on as a district council? And that I would just pose that as a question going forward. And if you're a bit worried about that, as I am, then I would suggest that supporting town and parish councils to take these sites on is the best way forward to make sure that they are a priority to that community, to that parish. So happy to look at that hierarchy, but just have an eye to where we might be in 5 years' time. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. So to Councillor Wellban's questions, I'll do the second one first, which is the question about if residents come to the council, can we help them through the process? We are doing that at the moment. We have been successful. We're looking at 5 high priority sites at the moment. We've been successful in 2. 2 are struggling because I think the developer has already sent in what they call the TP1 or whatever to the land registry, and I think that process has already started, and 1 we just had no response at all. But yes, we would try and work with residents, but it does depend on how the open space was transferred to the management organisation in the first place, whether it's residents management organisation. And my understanding is that if it's a residents management organisation, they can make a decision to sack the management company and get their own management company in, and that could be the district council. We could help in that instance. But I think if we're approached by any community, we will do our best to see what the options are for them and see whether we can help. But we won't be able to guarantee every success in every case, obviously. Some of these open spaces have been managed by management companies now for 10 years plus. So unpicking that is going to be quite difficult. And then the second one, I think, was about are there examples from any other places? And Rebecca, you did the research with Stratford and Warwick, didn't you? Have you got any information about what they do as far as adoption goes?
Yeah, so they have a relatively similar adoption hierarchy to that which is proposed in this. So we know that that approach has been adopted by other local authorities, by Stratford-on-Avon and Warwick District Council. So they are using that mechanism, and it is in their policy at the moment. We haven't had discussions with them to confirm kind of success rates on that, but that is the mechanism that they've gone through. The other thing that I just want to add is that even if the third scenario, so management companies do take on the open space, the recommendations in the updated open spaces strategy are far more robust in terms of holding that management company to account should things not go particularly well on a site. Additionally, it is highly likely that new open spaces will contribute to biodiversity net gain on any new development, and therefore there are probably additional legal mechanisms that can be used to enforce the maintenance of habitats on open space as well. So there's quite a lot of things in play and quite a lot of things that have changed since the previous strategy. So whilst we have the kind of the proposed adoption hierarchy of parish and district and the management companies, even if it got to the management company approach, there are other mechanisms now proposed in the open spaces strategy to help address any challenges that are faced.
Sorry. Yes, Councillor Welburn.
Thank you. So, I guess it's always preferred that it either comes to a parish or district, obviously in line with the hierarchy, but the policy is not an automatic one in terms of it goes straight to parish or district first. Actually, it could end up being a management company. Is that correct? And is there anything we can do legally to ensure that it doesn't go to a management company? I guess that's my question. Thank you.
I think the legal mechanism would be through a Section 106 agreement, and that is obviously a negotiation up front before planning permission is given. So we would look to get that hierarchy established in a legal agreement. That would be our best option, and saying that the developer must offer to the local authority, parish or district, would be the best option for us with that commuted sum. So that will be the legal process. For the first 10 or 11 years I worked at the authority, Section 106s were generally, and it was almost 100% adopted by the local authority. So we know it can happen, but it didn't always happen. So there were 2 or 3 sites in Market Harborough that were adopted by management companies and retained by developers in Broughton Astley because they wouldn't transfer with the commuted sum. So although we know it can happen, and it's been very successful for the first 11 years I was here, and I'm sure it can be again, we can't absolutely guarantee that we can force a developer to do this. But as David Atkinson said, with a policy in place, to breach that policy is quite a serious matter. we establish the policy, developers will know what happens in Harbour District, and we will be able to, I'm sure, work successfully over the next few years with communities and developers to achieve this.
Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not going to go over my questions again. It is a shame. We can't force the developer. If I was a developer, why would I give you 30 grand to look after that, or 100 grand to look after that bit of land for 30 years when I can just, as I say, keep the land, keep the ownership. Thank you very much. It's mine. Oh, management company, lease the residents and you look after it. And I'm sitting pretty, but we've gone through that. Can't persuade them. So I'd like to just move on slightly. It's still on the hierarchy. This funding mechanism, including cap, if any, brackets, on service charge. Now, this is very important because I have a particular neighbourhood on my ward where over the last 4 or 5 years, their service charge has gone from, I think, and this is what I'm quoting from a resident, from £200 per year to £800 a year. £800 a year for maintenance. And we're talking of a small village. We're not talking of Welland Park. So can somebody tell me this funding mechanism cap, if we're going to do this, is this going to be legally enforceable? And is this going to be something that's going to put a developer off coming to us as a district or parish because they can say, well, we'll just give it to a management company again. And if we don't do this, you know, there's no obligation to actually sign on to this funding cap, which I think is very, very good to see it. But I need to know, again, come back to my last phrase, what's the teeth behind it? It's great putting it in writing on a policy, but what are we going to do about it? And how do we monitor the charges? Because there's a lot of these developments across the district, and who is going to be doing the monitoring? Thank you.
The monitoring will have to be for any management company open spaces will have to be either the residents through residents complaints or working in conjunction with the enforcement officers at the district council. And if there's issues and complaints that come through planning enforcement, then we'll have to deal with those in that way. I'm not quite sure where the cap, where you're talking about a cap.
It's in the hierarchy, which is 9.17, which in our agenda pack is page 68, but the actual page number of the document is 94. Page 94 of the actual TEP document, which is very detailed. So it's paragraph 9.17, the hierarchy, and it's in the third bit where it says goes on to a third party management company. Funding mechanism, including cap, if any, on service charge.
Yeah. At the moment, I don't think there is a cap on any service charge. The management companies will charge essentially. I am working at the moment, and I got to do the response by middle of Feb, or is it March? I can't remember. But there's a government consultation out at the moment about leasehold and freehold. And I'm just working with CMT to get a response from us about that. So we're putting in our comments that obviously for us working around this and seeing what the issues are for us in the last 9 months, trying to translate that into what a national policy could be. And I would hope that the government will look at the way that leasehold charges can be made, and certainly in the news in the last couple of weeks has been looking at capping those, and if that applies to things like open space and estate charges and service charges for estate works, then that will be all the good for our residents and communities going forward. But how we can enforce a cap, I can't see it happening personally. I don't think we have at the moment the mechanism to do it.
Councillor Nunn.
Thank you. This question is actually for Leah. I know, I don't look so surprised. What it is, given the fact that we're out for consultation on community governance review at the minute regarding the potential of Market Harbour becoming a parish area, I've feel that due to the large amount of development that's going to be coming into Market Harbour in future years, that we need to be including something about this in that consultation, because one, it's going to put a greater onus on what those voluntary representatives on the parish would need to do, and it also may well, probably will add to the precept for the people living in Market Harbour. So I just think it needs to be included in that.
I suppose it's a little tricky because we don't ultimately know what the final outcomes might be in terms of either the CGR or the open spaces. So based on this policy now, we couldn't sit here and say this is how much might be extra on a precept if it was parish council, or if it was on the special expenses, if it was with the district council. I suppose there's the option for referring it to it in some of the consultation documents, so we could update to include that. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, that was all I was meaning. Thanks.
We've got a couple of guests in the gallery, so I'm going to, I mean, you can decide amongst yourselves who wants to go first. Peter James, if you want to take a seat in front of the microphone. I don't know what you had in mind. I don't know if it's questions or a statement. I mean, generally when it's a statement, we've normally afforded sort of 5 minutes or something along those lines. But I mean, you know how these things work.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chairman. Well, I had a set of notes. I've got a set of notes, and I'm pleased I'm in this position because some of them have been crossed off, so I'm not going to repeat those. But I just want to go back a bit because as to how we've got here. I think pre to 2016, we had a 15-year commuted sum, and pretty much all developers were quite happy to pay that sum. And then the work was done by the council. Then around about 2020, there were management companies, there were some difficulties, and I did actually bring a motion to council to actually review the open space management, and that was myself and Councillor McHugo, who was with me in that ward, and there was the 2020 review. I'm sad that Councillor Page is not here because I think she was piloting that, but I think she's put some questions in. And then we've gone on from that. And we didn't make any changes, really, not really many positive changes then, but the whole thing was reviewed, and here we are now, a number of years later. There were two fundamental issues here. I want to be positive about the report. I think it is a good report. There's loads and loads of data and information in there, and we get this hierarchy. But when we talk in there a little bit about equality, and the real problem we've got at the moment with open space management is we haven't got equality. I'm talking as a resident of Great Bowden, if you like, and I live in Great Bowden, and I look out the window and there's a lovely open space which is maintained by the district council, and I pay the council tax, and that's done. And then where we've got management companies operating, we've got people who are paying council abatements as up to £800 a year. I'm aware of between 200 and about 400. They're paying additional money. They have no control over it, and it does seem to escalate for all sorts of reasons. You know, we've had inflation, there's genuine reasons, but we've got people paying council tax, and we've got people paying council tax plus. I'll use that term before, and it's unfair and it's not equal. So that's something that needs addressing. And then the other one, during the 20 review, and we've mentioned actually the MP. I don't know whether the MP was consulted over this proposal here for reviewing, or anyone from the resident management companies. I'm not sure. You'd be able to tell me that, I think. But our MP has been very active on this in both property and open spaces, and spoke in Parliament on occasions on this, and he's fighting this with us in many ways. So it would be maybe good to talk to the MP. So that's with regard to inequality. And then the other issue for me is where we can really go with this, because during 2020 I spoke, indeed the MP did, with some developers, and I remember one developer, a major national company talking to me, I won't name them, of course, and saying that, well, we were quite happy with the 15 years, but no way are we going to up fund for 30 years.
1 minute, Councillor James.
Okay, now it was, they weren't up funding because it's the landowner who up funds really. So I think that is a real issue. Now we've spoken to 8 developers in the report. Have we had a feedback from those 8 developers that they are happy to go forward on a 30-year commuted sum? Because if they are, absolutely fine. And I think that will probably do at the moment. Yep, that will. Oh, we've got, just to tell you that we have got 3 management that we know of 3 management residential companies operating in this district, and I think they should be spoken to as well to get their angle. And maybe colleague James can come in onto that.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm not sure if there was a question necessarily in there, if anybody wanted to tackle it, or
there was a question about developers, or have developers fed back that they're content with the 30-year commuter term. Rebecca, I don't know whether you can remember what the developer said. I was just trying to find it in the consultation responses, but
yeah, we did consult with developers and had a fair amount of feedback and specific representation from some developer organisations that they didn't particularly like the option of the hierarchy that was proposed. However, we know that the public have obviously suggested that as a preferred approach. So in short, no, they haven't supported 30 years commuter term. However, with mandatory biodiversity net gain, again, with habitats being delivered on site, they will have to be, if they're being delivered on site, managed as per the target conditions for 30 years, regardless of how that is funded, whether that's funded through the management company or through management by district or parish council through commuted sum. So that piece of legislation under the Environment Act and the requirement for biodiversity net gain, if it is delivered on a new open space site, that space has to be managed for 30 years, regardless of how it's being funded.
I just add to that I mean, I said earlier that if we want the district council or local authorities to adopt open space, then it is part of our gift as councillors to make that decision about where you pitch a commuted sum level and what is going to be attractive to developers. If 30 years is unattractive, then do you take it down to 15? Do you take it down to 10? And we've got those figures. We've worked with TEP to provide the spreadsheet, so we know what those figures can be, and we can provide those to members in due course when it goes to Cabinet for that decision-making process. And we can pitch it where we like, and that's the gift of elected members to decide that. If your priority is that all open space is adopted by the local authority, then we get that commuted sum correct at the correct level to make it attractive. And if it's not 30 years, well, it's not 30 years. But there are, as Rebecca absolutely correctly says, there are mandatory obligations for biodiversity net gain to maintain those spaces. And we thought in discussion in the steering group that actually it would be a bit odd to have a 30-year maintenance requirement on some parts of an open space within development and perhaps only 10 or 15 years on another part. For consistency, we thought that would be reasonable, but we need to look at the figures and see what developers are prepared to do, and if it's the priority that this authority adopts, then we pitch that at the right level, as I said.
Okay, thanks for that, Matt. I mean, you've got the other point on that is if you've got a residence management company, when do you bring them in? Because of course, from the day the first house is sold on a development, the grass needs cutting, and and then you've got people coming in, and then you've got to have someone who's coming in who's prepared to be a director or part of a management company. So that can't happen immediately, but it could happen with a break clause, maybe a year on or something like that. And the resident companies management companies will always be cheaper because they're local and they will use local labour. We've got examples, and Councillor knows more about that than me, of electricians coming from St Albans and things like that, you know, over in Scrap Club. So
Thank you, Peter.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to answer that and just give a bit of feedback. Obviously, on larger development sites, open space tends to be delivered over a period of time. Part of it may be delivered early in the entrance to the development. It could be that the developers put his site compound and offices on part of the open space, so that's not delivered until right at the end of the development. But within Section 106 agreements and the delivery agreements that we have with developers, they are obliged to have a trigger to deliver all the open space by a certain number of occupation, and after that, maintain it for 12 months at the developer's expense for a snagging period. It's called the maintenance period. So we will get, and this happens now, we will get developers to finish the open space. We go and check it, say, yes, okay, it's generally laid out in accordance with the landscape plan. Now maintain it for 12 months. And then during that 12-month period, they are expected to, any issues that might turn up, correct, dead plants, replant, and then they come back to us after 12 months and say, right, come and inspect it again. And can we now say that this is complete? And at that point, it will go to the managing organisation, whether that's district council, parish council, or a management company at that point after 12 months maintenance. So that can pick up, that stops residents being charged for that 12 months management period. And we'll pick up the issues that you highlighted, that, you know, as soon as one person moves in, the grass is going to need cutting. And that will still remain the responsibility of the developer, either through a grounds maintenance company or other.
Okay.
But it is that process to get those open spaces delivered, especially on larger sites, can be quite complex and a long process.
And just finally, we should remember that within our main contracts, we do have a contractor who works for us in the main contract, and they could have a part in that as well. They work all over the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I believe we have another gentleman in the gallery. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself first, and as I say, we try and stick to the statements to 5 minutes. Thank you.
So I've got a couple of pages, but I'll try and keep it brief. So my name's James Ward. I live in Little Bowden, so in Peter's ward. I live on a site called Little Bowden Rise, which was built 2016, 2018. We have a management company, so looking at the study, there didn't seem to be any consultation with resident management companies. So Peter asked me to come along and share my experience of living a resident management company cycle. So I moved in September 2018. The site was signed off in May 2019 by HDC. We had lots of problems on the site. We had breed and gravel paths, which washed out every time it rained. There was a lot of safety issues, mats on play areas missing, hedges and various bits. I personally had to put a lot of effort into that. Interesting what Matt was saying about the first year's charge. They charged us for the first year's maintenance. That was £14,000. With Peter's help, we managed to get that back, but that was a lot of hard work. Working with a developer personally, holding their feet to the fire, managed to get everything corrected on the site, but it was a personal challenge. We are now at 2026, and we have in our site, we have a company. I think most of these sites have a company, and then you have a managing agent. So the people, when we talk about the management, they're a managing agent, and the company is often with a director. So in our case, in 2026, we've now had an AGM, and we've got 3 local directors. So the builders directors have moved on, and we've got the site. So it'll be interesting to talk to you, Matt, about who does our management, because we've got a 4-month notice period for our managing agent. So when we started off, we were told that the maintenance charge would be about £200. We're now at £450, so ours has gone up. And interesting, if you look at, I challenged our managing agent, and they said, well, we price it off book on the plan, and therefore, but when we get it, obviously it's going to go up. So there's these hidden extras going on. Saying that, we've had a broken knee rail by our play area for the last 20 months, not been fixed despite chasing on a regular basis. So they are not very efficient companies, and say we're paying £450. So in terms of the other points in the OSS review, equality, yeah, Market Harbour I think is somewhat discriminated against because it doesn't have a town council or parish council. All the strategies talk about robust control measures in place. I personally have not experienced any of those. I've tried to get Harbour District Council to help me on all my issues, and I must admit Peter helped me, but I had no support whatsoever. There was talked about service charge caps and quality standards. I asked what those were because back in 2016 there was a paragraph which said we will vet all of these companies. So I said, can I see the vetting? Nothing came forward. Also in the 2016 strategy, there was a very useful bit about we will help parish councils and resident management companies. Will provide some help and guidance so you can manage your sites. And I think that is missing from this strategy. Maybe we should be putting a bit more effort into helping parish councils, giving them the confidence to take these projects on, as the same with residents. All of the strategies, we have adoptions of primacy. If you read the 2016 strategy, it says exactly the same. Parish councils, district councils, goes on and on. But that has not happened. As far as I'm aware, that the only significant take on of a piece of land by the district council was in Kibworth a few years ago, and that was only taken on because the commuter sum was reduced for exceptional circumstances to 15 years. So
1 minute, please.
Okay, so in 10 years since we've had one site taken on, so it's not great. And the other thing is commuter charges. So if you look at the commuter charges that are published on HTC website for a child's play area, it's £3 million for 10 years. If you look at per annum, it's 148k, of which 131k is raking loose infill. I think we need to look at those commuter charges because most play areas are hard. They don't have raked infill. So you're asking vast amounts for commuter charges for actually, it needs to be more realistic. I think we've already said that. We need to have realistic commuter charges. Sign off is difficult because things are getting signed off. Hursley Park's another site where vast problems with signed off with Breeden gravel paths all washed out, and now the residents are picking up the tab on that. I think most points we've covered. Oh, one other point, greenways. So it talks about greenways. The council has been very good at getting greenways funding. There's £100,000 in greenways funding to be spent 20 this year or next year. Some of it's already expired. What are we doing about that? How are we going to get that spent? Because that's £100,000 that we could put in connecting sites.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, James. Matt, did you want to answer some of those queries?
Yes, and yes, James, we've had over many years ongoing with the Bowden Ridge development, and you worked extremely hard. I'm really pleased that you're able to bring your insight today and tell us about the mechanism and how management companies are set up, because I think that's really interesting. About putting resources and ensuring that parish councils are more robust. Yes, it would be really good if we could do that. How we do it, I don't know. And get parish councils confident to then take on open space. That would be a good place to be. Just as you made a comment about commuted sums being at the right level. Yes, that's something I'm absolutely convinced needs to happen. You made a comment about £3 million for children's play areas. It is, that's £3 million per hectare, but of course a children's play area is only generally 400 square metres, 600 square metres. So it then comes down to a more reasonable amount for the commuted sum. But you're absolutely right, they are expensive. And we need to look at, as a council, look at how we're best going to pitch those.
Greenways funding, are we going to be able to?
Greenways funding, yes. We have been very successful at getting greenways funding over the years for a number of communities. It's about enhancing those accessible links, the access to countryside, public rights of way and so on. And there is, I understand, an amount of money sitting in the Section 106 grants pot at the moment, which officers are working on spending. I think Councillor Asher, Katie Fox is dealing with that, and we've been in touch with Bob from the Harbour Sustainable Transport Network.
Yes.
And with the green wheel concept, which is mentioned in this strategy, to try and get some money into that initiative, which would be really good to do. I don't know when spend by dates are, and I don't get directly involved with allocating that funding as a cost, but I think that's something we could take away, isn't it, Professor Asher?
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had a meeting with Katie the other day about this, and I need to actually speak to Kat as well, because I think this is an issue where we need a lot of people around the table. And Katie was saying LCC had emailed a lot of different officers here as well to get involved. So I think they need to be involved as well. I think Katie said that there is still some time on the spend by, but obviously if we're not here soon, we need to sort of move this forward sooner rather than later. So I am keen to get this meeting underway. So any help you can give me as well, Matt, as to push internally, that would be great. Thank you.
So some of this is some has already expired, and some there's 100,000 for 2026. So we're already well in starting in 2026, and it's well dispersed. So it's all over the place. So it's in Gilmorton, quite a lot in Gilmorton, Hibworth, Fleckney, Market Harbour. So it's pretty, there's a fair bit of money out there.
Yeah, it would be, if I take my community where I live, if we had £10,000 to spend on improving stiles and access through fields across the public rights of way network, that would be the sort of thing that I think could be quite easily distributed to county council partners to spend that money. The neighbouring Langton to us, Thorpe and East Langton, they've done that, and it's brilliant. And I think at Gilmorton, in some of those village communities, getting that access into the countryside is really important. So it's about that. The money, I think, could be used in that way, but it's about engaging. For us, it's about engaging with the parish councils, and the parish councils or the county council deciding what the priority is, and then us being able to distribute that money accordingly.
Thank you very much for your comments, James and Peter. I'll come back to the panel just to make sure before I draw this to a close. Is there any more comments or questions from? Go ahead, Councillor Wellbound, then I'll come to you.
We mentioned at the very start about allotments, and it's something I raised when I first got elected, and there's clearly not enough allotment space in the district, and I just wondered, because must confess I've not read cover to cover this particular strategy, what the strategy says on allotment provision. If anyone could answer that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Allotment provision is generally sought on site for the larger sites, but it can also be part of a community garden or community orchard. So we would look at areas for growing, for communities to grow. If I think about a site in Oaks Road, Great Glen, they put in a community orchard there, which appears to be quite successful. It's a formally set out orchard with fruit trees. Others have actually had allotments, physical allotments installed, but that would only usually be on the large sites. That's something over probably 100 dwellings. But we do seek it at the rate of, I think it's 0.35 hectares per thousand of population. So we can see that the number of allotments have increased over the last few years, certainly since I've been doing open space comments, and new allotment sites have come on stream. There's one at Kibworth, which was open 7 or 8 years ago, I think. And one at Fleckney, which was opened about 12 years ago. So we have been successful in getting those. But you're right, there is a deficit. I have struggled in the past to get some parish councils to understand the deficit, and they have said, we don't want allotments here, we have no need for them. And I've said, but we have evidence that you do. So it is that conversation and that dialogue with some parish councils to get them to understand where we're coming from. And growing is important.
Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was just going to say, I appreciate you don't want the meeting to drag on forever. It's our job to send this back to Cabinet with our comments. I'd just like to make sure that Cabinet's aware that perhaps the planning side of things needs to be given some teeth, a bit of a boost in there to make sure that the developers are aware that, you know, we'd like to really move away from management companies and let the district, parish, whoever take it on. And I support Councillor Galton's idea of the ownership of the land should be public. How it's maintained, that you know, hopefully that will follow by the ownership being public in the first place. And I think that the Cabinet should just be perhaps nudged in the way just to try and beef it up a bit on the within the policy once it gets through to council. And thank the staff from TEP for tonight's presentation. And I think the report's brilliant, really good, very detailed. Thank you to them.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Councillor Bateman. So the drawing of a close to this would be that Democratic Services have been making notes of comments and recommendations that this panel has been making. So, Leah, would that be yourself if you wanted to run through these? I mean, looks like you're still typing, to be fair, so I'm sorry to put the fire under your feet.